Hey, welcome to Mikey's RC. In this lesson, we are finally going to get to the helicopter off the ground. We will be doing this by performing a bunch of short hops, slowly building up the amount of time we are in the air until we can just sit and hover for as long as we want. This video is the first that deals with flying the helicopter in what's called hovering flight. Well, duh, obviously. This is where the helicopter has almost no movement relative to the ground. We first started with sliding around on the ground just to get the basics of coordination and orientation. Now we will be covering hovering. Then in later videos we'll talk about transitional flight, which is how to get the helicopter moving in a certain direction from hovering. Then forward flight, which is flying the helicopter almost as if it was an airplane. And finally 3D flight. So let's grab our helicopters and go start hovering. Now that we are finally leaving the ground, there are a few things to keep in mind. Number one is that the controls in the air are way more sensitive than they were when we were sliding on the ground. On the ground we had to move the cyclic all the way to the left or the right or front or back to get the helicopter to slide around. In the air, this kind of wild movement would send the helicopter flying across the garage almost instantaneously. So make sure to be more gentle on all of the controls, the cyclic as well as the rudder. Watch my thumbs when I begin to hover to get an idea of how much to move them. Hint number two is that since the helicopter is not touching the ground anymore, you really have to anticipate what you want it to do, especially once it starts moving. Because once it's moving, there's no friction on the skids to slow it down like it is on the ground. So if you have given it a little bit of cyclic input, let's say to go forward, and you let go, it's going to keep moving in that direction until you give it a little bit of back cyclic to stop that movement. Hint number three is that the balance and trim are way more important once you have the helicopter in the air. Most coaxial helicopters like this one come pretty well trimmed out of the box. But if you're following along these videos with a more advanced helicopter like the 6-channel T-Rex 450, you want to make sure that you get it dialed in. You can check your trims by getting your helicopter to the almost hovering point. Then do a quick low hop and see if the helicopter wants to veer off in any direction or rotation. If it does, use the trims on your transmitter to correct so that when you do that little quick hop, it doesn't want to do that veering or rotating anymore. Hint number four. If you're following along these videos with either a fixed pitch helicopter or a 450 size or larger helicopter, then you should be aware of ground effect. If you hover a helicopter like this really low, within about 1.5 feet from the ground, the helicopter might act a little strange, as if it's floating on a cloud of air. That's what's called ground effect. So you might want to hover a little higher. The ground effect area is about the same distance as the diameter of your rotors. Fortunately, ground effect doesn't seem to affect coaxial helicopters like this very much. But I'd say it's still a good rule of thumb to try hovering about 1.5 feet to 2 feet off the ground. Give yourself some distance for correcting for mistakes that you make. Any type of helicopter, coaxial, fixed pitch, or more advanced 6-channel helicopters, remember, if you're about to crash, make sure to close the throttle. If you leave the throttle on when the helicopter crashes, there's more chance of doing damage to the helicopter, as well as either burning out the ESC, speed controller, or the 4-in-1 mixer. The 4-in-1 mixer in a coaxial helicopter is the little brain of the unit. It's got an internal gyro, which keeps your tail from wagging too much, as well as your speed controller. So again, you don't want to fry that, otherwise you're looking about a $40 plus shipping repair. Now during the hovering training, we will basically be just practicing all the same maneuvers as we did in the sliding section. Wag the tail, forward and backward, side to side, all in different orientations with the helicopter. First we try a couple of hops though, to get the feel of being in the air. Alright, let's stop talking and get to some flying. Bring your throttle up to the almost hovering position. Watch for the helicopter to move in any one direction. Then correct with your trim. Again, bring your throttle up to the almost hovering position. Then give a small boost of power. Bring your helicopter up to about 1.5 to 2 feet. Hold it hovering there for 2 seconds and then gradually bring it back down gently. The most important thing to do right now during these hovers is to keep the tail of the helicopter pointed towards you. And again, you do this using very gentle rudder input. Do this exercise a couple more times until you can get comfortable with it. Now that you have a feel for how much throttle it takes to get the helicopter up to its hovering point, Let's add in just a little bit of cyclic while we're up there. You want to get the helicopter up, and this time gently try to keep the helicopter hovering in the same spot and same orientation above the ground for 4 seconds. Then bring it back down. One, 2, 3, 4, and back down. Try this exercise again. One, 2, 3, 4, and back down. Sweet. Now pat yourself on the back. You just hovered your helicopter using the throttle, the rudder, and your cyclic controls to maintain coordinated hovering. It just gets more and more fun from here. Practice that maneuver a bunch till you get really comfortable with it. This step is the core of hovering. You really need to master this. Do you see how little I move my cyclic and my rudder once I'm hovering? My helicopter is trimmed well, and I'm just keeping it hovering in the same spot. The last thing we're going to do for this video is practice wagging the tail while hovering. Get your helicopter hovering and wag the tail back and forth slowly. It may help to kind of center the cyclic while doing this. Don't be off to one side or the other. With a well-balanced helicopter, you shouldn't need to micromanage the movements. Just apply a small amount of cyclic to help correct the overall movement of the helicopter. In the next video, we're going to be covering spinning or doing a pirouette, moving forwards and backwards, side to side, all while hovering. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of the new videos.